Welcome back, folks, once again to WrestleRant. I am Graham G.S. Matthews, and right here in WrestleRant, I break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network, and today we're talking Bad Blood 2004. So opening the event for the World Tag Team titles, La Resistance, defending the gold against Chris Benoit and Edge. In a fun little match, Chris Benoit at this time was, of course, the WWE's World Heavyweight Champion. Edge would go on to win the Intercontinental Championship the following month at Vengeance. So Benoit and Edge, I think, were still teaming while they were both respective champions. So that was a bit cool dynamic, and Benoit having a warm-up match before his World Championship match later on in the night with Kane, which I'll get to momentarily as well, and how it kind of tied into this contest. But before the interference from Kane, the match was pretty good. I mean, La Resistance, it never really felt like they got over as a heel tag team, as like a major heel tandem. For whatever reason, I always thought the tag team was good. Of course, I wasn't around at that time, but watching pay-per-views back and watching their matches and their gimmick, it wasn't that bad of a match. I feel like the second incarnation of the group was not nearly as good as the first, when Rene Dupree got moved over to SmackDown, and then Grenier and Conway stayed on Raw, and they teamed up again. So I don't know, it was weird because Rene Dupree was already kind of doing that shtick over on SmackDown, same music, same everything. So why not just move him back to Raw? Because once they figured out that Grenier and Conway were just failing on their own, they put him back together. So that was a bit weird. But anyway, the match itself was good, ended in a DQ after Kane came out and attacked Benoit, costing him the match in the championships. I mean, they won the match via DQ, but not the titles. So a cool way of kicking off the show. It's not, very often that you see, first of all, the world champion in action twice in one show. And then two, you have a match earlier on in the evening build towards the world title match later on in the night. It's almost like an episode of Raw in that respect, but done better, with like championships on the line and stuff like that. So I like the dynamic there. Kind of made the World Tag Team titles feel like an afterthought. And at that point, they kind of were. I think Benoit and Edge would go on to win the tag team titles together at some point that summer, maybe even the next night. I'm not sure, but they would not win the belts here in a fun little opener match to kick off the show. After that, we had Chris Jericho versus Tyson Tomko. This was Jericho's in the midst of his feud with Christian and Tristratus and Tomko, whatever. The match was all right. Tomko wasn't that good. I feel like he should have been a lot bigger of a deal than he was in WWE. I mean, ultimately, he would get better when he moved over to Japan. He was better in TNA. But in WWE, he kind of fell flat. I don't know why, but he did. So the match was all right. Jericho carried him to a pretty decent match. He won the match. And that was pretty much it. Very limited interference from Trish. Christian was nowhere to be seen. So that was pretty much it. Yeah, Chris Jericho won the match. After that, for the Intercontinental Championship, Orton comes out, trashing the crowd, talking about how he's been champion. And the next day marked 6 months, or would have marked, or, I guess ultimately did, would mark 6 month mark, would have the 6 month mark of him as Intercontinental Champion. So he's just trashing the crowd. Classic Randy Orton. The guy was fucking on fire at this point in time throughout all of 2004 before Triple H ruined his momentum as World Heavyweight Champion. That was for a couple more months, but still. As IC Champion, the guy was on fire. So cutting a great promo, soon to be interrupted by Shelton Benjamin. In a really, really good match. They got some great time in almost 15 minutes, the third longest match of the night. Really good chemistry here. Ric Flair interfered. Cost Benjamin the match. Orton in the end holding the tights of Benjamin to retain the title. So again, great match. This really should have been a breakout performance for Benjamin. He would go on to win the belt, many months later in late 2004. But he really should have been a bigger deal than what he was. Of course, same thing with him, a lot like with Tomko. That long term, he should have been a lot bigger of a deal. I mean, you could blame his mic skills, his backstage attitude, which I heard was shit. I think I was watching some video with Kurt Hawkins. And I might have talked about this before. But I watched some video with Kurt Hawkins a couple months ago with him breaking down the year of 2008 in WWE with, like RF Stein video, something like that. And he just said, the interviewer asked him, did Shelton Benjamin get enough opportunities? Do you think he should have been more than what he was in WWE? Do you feel like he should have been a world champion? Blah, blah, blah. And then Kurt Hawkins surprisingly said, no, he got exactly what he deserved. He was given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And it was Benjamin that squandered those opportunities with his attitude. And I don't think he was ever suspended for the wellness policy, so I don't think that was the case. I just feel like maybe they thought he was lazy. Like Carlito had a reputation for being lazy, and that's why he was never pushed beyond a certain level. So I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, great match here. Orton's still the Intercontinental Champion. After that, a fatal four-way match, the Women's Championship. Trish Stratus beating Victoria, Lita, and Gail Kim in the match to win the gold, to win her 5th women's title. In a fun little match, I like the story they told here. They furthered the feud and kind of kicked off the feud between Trish and Lita going into SummerSlam that year without having Trish pin Lita. I think she pinned Gail Kim, or maybe she did pin Lita. She did pin Lita. She did pin Lita. And they kind of told the story that Lita wasn't really in it because Matt Hardy was escorted from the building, her real-life boyfriend, because of Kane and blah, 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 by Eric Bischoff. So the match wasn't really anything special, but I did like they told a good story here, and it was a lot better than like the fulfill your fantasy battle royals and the fucking bras and panties bullshit. So it was more of a match than you would expect. Fun while it lasted almost 5 minutes. I mean, a fatal four-way with 4 women should be more than fucking 5 minutes. But still, for what it was, that it was good, and it told a good story with Trish Stratus coming out victorious as the new women's champion. After that, our comedic filler match of the night with Eugene taking on Jonathan Coachman. It was Eric Bischoff trying to do away with his nephew Eugene by having Coach, go up against him and try to beat him, but ultimately he was unsuccessful. Losing to Eugene with a rock bottom and a people's elbow, Eugene emerges victorious and remains undefeated. Fun for what it was. I mean, Eugene, the character, was never going to get above a certain level. He would go from facing the Coach on the show to facing fucking Triple H at SummerSlam, so interpret that as you will, in which, of course, Triple H would and should have won. But anyway, so the match was fun for what it was. I mean, again, he was never going to be Intercontinental Champion or a World Champion, obviously. I mean, the guy was a good worker, saddled with like a dumb gimmick. I mean, a lot like Santino in that respect, although I thought Eugene was 10 times more entertaining. And they would never do something like this today with a mentally challenged gimmick. I mean, that was so tasteless. Kind of thinking back on it now. But the match was fun. I mean, the Coach kind of turned everything that he was involved into gold. I mean, the guy was great. So he kind of made this fun. Eugene was a fun character. For what this was, it was good. I think Eugene at this level was good, and people loved him. I don't think pushing him beyond that main event level with, in feuds with Kurt Angle and Triple H was really the best idea. They kind of, pushed him beyond his limits in that respect. But as far as this goes, for a comedic filler match, I liked it. After that, for the World Heavyweight Championship, Chris Benoit taking on Kane, who was in kind of a role, but not really. Of course, they had the whole match with him and Taker at WrestleMania, which he lost. And that, in my opinion, kind of cut the momentum of Kane short. He wasn't really as much of a monster as he once was in the months leading up to WrestleMania, but he was still somewhat of a threat to the World Championship, considering Benoit was champion and no one ever really thought he would last as long as he did as World Heavyweight Champion. But still, I thought the match was good. Benoit, in the end, locking in the crippler crossface, Kane powering out of it, Benoit reversing it into a roll-up. That was a great finish. The match was pretty entertaining. I liked the monster versus, the David versus Goliath dynamic there, so it was great, and a great little underdog story to tell with Benoit as champion. Again, Kane was never really that much of a threat to the title, but still, he was as much of a threat that the match was entertaining and not, completely forgettable. Or, I guess it was kind of forgettable because Benoit's reign did not last long, and most of that reign was kind of was made up of him facing Shawn Michaels and Triple H for the most part, mostly Triple H. But anyway, the match was good, and Benoit retained the World Championship. So we get to the main event, which I have probably talked about before. I'm sure I have. Hell in a Cell for the second Bad Blood pay-per-view in a row. Technically the third in a row, because the first ever Bad Blood pay-per-view back in 1997, which was technically an in-your-house pay-per-view, which is why I didn't review it here for the channel yet. I'll probably talk about it when I go on my in-your-house pay-per-view reviews at some point down the line. But that hosted the first ever Hell in a Cell match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker back in October of 1997. In Bad Blood, in June of 2003, the year prior, also held the Hell in a Cell match, which I talked about in my last video. Cheap plug if you want to check it out. Kevin Nash versus Triple H, and now Triple H steps inside the cell again against his longtime enemy and former friend, Shawn Michaels. So this, again, is a very polarizing match. I thought it was a great match. I thought it told a stellar story, but I could see why people would have called it boring or they didn't like it. The match went over 45 minutes long. Was it a long match? Obviously, yes. It did not need to last that long. But I really, really enjoyed it. Part of just because I thought the feud was awesome. I really, really enjoyed the feud between Triple H and Michaels. How they were able to kind of kick off their feud in 2002 and go back to it at various points over the next few years. They faced each other a few times in 2003. Of course, they kicked off their feud in 2002, and they would go back to that feud in 2004. And they faced off in pretty much every stipulation possible. No holds barred, street fight, 3 stages of hell, last man standing, triple threat, now Hell in a Cell. So I thought it was great, and I really, really enjoyed the chemistry they had here. Again, it was kind of dragging at certain points. I thought the incorporation of the weapons was great. Probably the most, alive the crowd was during the course of this contest with the table spots, a ladder spot, probably a few steel chair spots if I remember correctly. But I thought it was a very not a very exciting match, but an entertaining match in the respect they told a great story, and it capped out the feud in the best way possible. Again, my only gripe with the match was that it did not need to last as long as it did. But I would still certainly say, as I talked about my video blog last October, definitely ranks up there as one of my favorite Hell in a Cell matches of all time. Just, with the story they told over the past 2 years and not just in this match. So again, they probably could have cut it short by 15 minutes maybe, And in the end, Triple H hit Shawn Michaels with not one, not two, but I believe 3 pedigrees to put him over strong. So Shawn Michaels was by no means buried. But I felt like Shawn Michaels should have picked up the defining victory to kind of close the feud strong, since he did lose most of his matches with Triple H. He only beat him at SummerSlam, and that was about it. But still, great match. Really enjoyed it. Probably, easily among my top 5 favorite Hell in a Cell matches of all time. So that closed out Bad Blood 04. I mean, overall, not the most significant pay-per-view long-term wise. I mean, it did end the very ruthless rivalry between Shawn Michaels and Triple H after almost 2 years. But the rest of the show is pretty forgettable. Again, long-term wise, didn't serve much of a purpose. It was kind of a transitional pay-per-view before Vengeance, and then before SummerSlam and whatever else. But I did like the show. I did enjoy it a lot more than I did Bad Blood 03, which felt like it had a lot of throwaway, mediocre matches I could not have given 2 shits about in a pretty subpar main event. I love the main event on the show. The undercard was pretty good too. Benoit and Kane had a really good match, a better match than I would have given him credit for. The women's match served a purpose. Eugene and Coachman was fun for while it lasted. Orton and Benjamin having a great mid-card IC title match. Jericho and Tomko was fine for what it was, and the opener was fun for what it was too, kind of building towards the main event. So I really enjoyed the show. Like I said, check it out on the WWE Network. I would certainly suggest the show over its predecessor of Bad Blood 03. Again, you can check it out only on the WWE Network. So, of course, guys, that is my review of Bad Blood 2004. Thank you for watching and listening as always. My next video will be covering, or my next few videos will be covering the Battleground pay-per-views from 2013, 2014, and 2015 before this year's installment in a few more weeks. But in the meantime, and in between time, you guys can follow me on the Twitter at WrestleRant on Facebook. Find me there and the page channel thumbs up at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. And right here on YouTube by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Again, as I said earlier, all support is amazingly appreciated. So have a great one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.